Hello and welcome back to Hebrew Grammar by Implicit Learning through Elaborative Encoding. We've been walking through just very simple principles that are derived from this book that I was a participating author of, Hebrew Grammar. I did this with one of my Hebrew profs, Dr. Jeff Griffin at New Orleans Seminary. And hopefully you've been watching through the different videos and reading through the book and releasing any anxiety that you might have had in learning Hebrew as you are coming to and through this text. Here today, we're going to begin walking through another concept that is called the Jonah principle. Again, the two reasons, or the main area why I went to Dr. Griffin, and the second area that I went to Dr. Griffin was both in regard to parsing. Hebrew verb parsing. Verb parsing is, quite frankly, the hardest concept in any language, in my opinion. And it's because most of the time verbs in other languages, different than English, will change, will morph, will look quite different than the dictionary form that you end up learning in your language course. So let's begin our concept and talk through what we like to call the Jonah principle. The Jonah principle. What I often like to say is that why in the world are we afraid of weak verbs? Why in the world are we afraid of weak verbs? Whenever we come to Hebrew language, we often quite quickly learn and realize that all Hebrew verbs fit within two camps. They're either weak or they are strong. Either weak or they are strong. Weak verbs have letters that might run away, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Strong verbs would be the verbs that we talked about in the last lesson in what we call the Hezekiah principle. And so we need to pay attention to these verbs in particular because the letters might run away in the biblical text. And so then you look at it and you say, I have no clue what this word is. But you can know what the word is by walking through a very simple step process that we give to you today. Let's remind ourselves of the Hebrew principle that we covered last time called the Hezekiah principle. Hezekiah, of course, means that Yahweh will strengthen. And we want to build you up and strengthen you to parse Hebrew well in this course and through our textbook. But we use Hezekiah's name as an acronym. Each letter we use for a different word. And so we say that first we hoog the center of the word. We hoog the root of the word, the root of the verb. Hence we have Haggai. And so that's the first step. Second step, we zachar. We remember to look for the dagesh either in the first or the second letter of the root. First or second letter of the root. Third step is kadosh, which comes from the kof there. Kadosh, which means to make something holy. Is there something that makes it set apart? At this point in time, step 3 is where you might find a hey tav shoved to the beginning part or the front side of your verb. And then you say, oh, it's a hifil or a hitpile, and that will help you see that there. Now, just as a way of reminder, step number 3 will supersede step number 2. So if in the root there is a dagesh, but at the beginning of the word is a hey, the hey will take the precedent. It's not a piel, it's not a nifal just because it has a dagesh. Look at that hifil at the beginning of the verb, okay? Then we say Yosef, which is another principle that we covered. Yosef principle is things that get added to the backside of the verb or other words. And so then it can give clarity as to the person, number, and gender of that verb or the words. If it's a verb, then it tells us who is doing or who is receiving the action of the verb. If it is attached to, say, prepositions or nouns or something of that sort, then it tells us to whom, the preposition, right? Or it tells us possibly who we are speaking about, for instance, in the case of the et marker, the direct object marker. The Joseph principle, what we're speaking of today, weak letters that run away in the verb, will show up either in the first or the second step of the Hezekiah principle. The first or the second step of the Hezekiah principle. So this is literally what had happened to me today. I was reading with some students. The passage drawn from the bowl for the day was Leviticus chapter 19. And a student came to a word there in Leviticus 19 and said, Mario, I see that there's a tav and I see that there's a vav on the backside of the word, yet there's only 2 letters there. A tav at the beginning and a vav on the backside. This is a verb, they said, rightly. But they didn't find a third letter in the middle. And so I asked them, well, what principle just happened? And they said, it has to be Jonah. The tav showed up or the vav showed up and it scared away something. And in this instance, it was a hay. It was a hay that ran away. So much like Jonah, right? We could go to the text and put it this way. Jonah's name means dove. Jonah's name means dove. If you've ever been around doves before, maybe walking through a farm or out in the field or something of that sort, doves are very flighty birds. They will take off and fly away at the slightest of sounds or slightest of disturbance. Jonah 1:3, but Jonah rose up and he fled to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He flees to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord, just like a dove will often run away from us. Now, the reason that we say it is the Jonah principle is because literally the letters that spell Jonah's name that you have before you there are letters that will often run away, okay? Plus one other that we have over there, the lamed. So we say it this way in the book and in the principle, you need to learn, with a lamed, you need to learn the Jonah principle. You need to learn the Jonah principle. The hey at the end of the Jonah principle also is a representative of the guttural letters, which could be the aleph, the hey, the het, and the ayin. Okay, so let's delve into this. Now, this is the most important slide that you will see right now. Now, you might be wondering, why is it the most important slide, Mario? Because this is not something that I see whenever I open my Bible. The reason that it's really important is, let's just imagine, like myself, you're reading a text that you've not translated before, you don't know, maybe you don't know the grammar of, and you run into a word and you say, I don't know that word. And so then you get a commentary on the Hebrew of that particular book, right? And you pull it open and you look at it, and then the book might tell you, this is a first class weak verb. Well, if you don't know what that means, then you don't know what happened to the word. Maybe they might say it is a pay class weak verb. Something along those lines. This most important slide is to help you understand what those Hebrew grammar commentary of the Hebrew text, what they are implying or what they are talking about whenever they say this is a weak verb of this particular type. So let's walk through some of these things. The nomenclature that we see here on this prior slide, right? Up above you have 1, 2, and 3. It's supposed to be looking sort of kind of like Roman numerals there, but it just looks like sticks in this font, but that's okay. So you will either see 1, 2, and 3, or you will see the letters pa'al with the pei, ayin, and lamed there at the bottom. And the reason is that oftentimes they use the pa'al or the 1, 2, 3 to say, in this position of the root verb, that particular letter ran away. That's all they're saying to us, okay? So for instance, we might see a noon appearing in the first letter of the root. And so noon can run away because remember, Jonah, Yonah, there's a noon in Jonah's name. If the noon is in the first position of the weak verb, we will call this a noon pay, or a pay noon weak verb, okay? It depends upon if you're reading right to left or left to right for that definition there. It's really hard to balance between bouncing back and forth to right to left, but that's okay. So the question, a verb with an aleph in the first letter, what type of a weak verb would that be? Anybody think about it? What would that weak verb type be? That would be a pay aleph weak verb. It would be a pay aleph weak verb, okay? Now, you could, and many of the Hebrew grammar books that we've surveyed as we were writing this textbook, many of the grammar books will just give you list after list after list of weak verbs for you to memorize. Memorize these 70 weak verbs, because oftentimes the letters will run away and they're like, you need to know these. I think you definitely should know the verbs, okay, just for dictionary vocabulary knowledge. I don't think that you need to know them because, well, I know which letter is weak. No. Just know the verbs because you need to know the words, not necessarily because you need to know that they are weak verbs. So as we look at this chart that I have before you here, this is extremely helpful. Here's why I say it's extremely helpful. Again, today I was reading with a student, Leviticus 19. They come to a word and they see that there's a tav at the beginning, so it's imperfect. They see a vav at the backside, so they know that the pronoun ending of who's going to be doing or receiving the action. Then they see there's only 2 letters there in the middle, and they say, Mario, I don't know what letters missed. I don't know what letters ran away. First of all, I asked them the question, does this word, if you say just those 2 letters together, sound like anything? And so they said, ash, ash, ash. And I said, okay, so you have 2 letters there. Does it sound like any word that you know? To which the student rightly says, asha. Oh, to make or do. So something ran away. What ran away? The hey ran away, okay? And so whenever you look at this, you can take this little chart, which, by the way, comes on that little handout that I offer to you in my Etsy store or in the textbook. Take this little chart, and whenever you run into those words that letters have ran away, look at this and say, well, let me try the letters on the front side. Nun, yod, lamed, aleph. Nope, it's not giving me a word that I know. What about the vav, yod, vav, or a germinate, which is a double, okay? Maybe the guttural, maybe a aleph, a hey, a nun, or a lamed on the backside, the 3rd position, okay? And if you go through these systematically, you can figure out what the word is. Now, of course, in the day and age where we all have very easily accessed digital tools, both downloadable, purchasable, or online, you can quickly find out what the word is. You could just, with the cursor, hover over it and figure it out. But nevertheless, I would encourage you to try to memorize in these positions, these letters can disappear. And in fact, I have my students memorize that particular listing of which letters can disappear in each position. These are things that we see here. And so again, these are a few of the really famous, these are the top 10, maybe in my estimation, the top 10 weak verbs that you will encounter throughout the Bible, right? And then we have here and I just grabbed some of the ones that we see from pays, from ions, and from lamed position weakness. And so we see amad, we see akal, we see nafal, yashev, we have shalach, we have shuv, we have savav, we have shalach again, we have masah, and we have banah. Let's walk through some of these and look at them in regards to being in their first place. So the first one that we're going to consider here is pay weak class verbs. These particular ones before you, all of them in the number 1 position, the far right position of the 3 that's before you, in the far right position, the pay or the number 1 position, the letter is a Jonah letter that might run away if you stick something on the front of the word. And so these are the ones that we see. We have an ayin weak, an aleph weak, a nun, a yod, a hey, a resh, a chet, a lamed weak, okay? And these all could show up in the first position and could run away. So you have amad to stand, you have ahav to love, you have nafal to fall, right? And the list goes on. And so I want you to read through these that are in the textbook. Number 2 is the center position of the 3-letter root, because remember, all Hebrew verbs are 3 letters. And so we have the ayin position or number 2 position weak. So all of these words before you have a letter that's in the dead center of the 3-letter root that may run away if you stick something on the front side of the word. And so we have shalach, which is to send. You have mut, which is to die. You have ma'as, which is to refuse or reject. You have mahar. You have bahan. You have ba'ar, parad. The list goes on, right? And so all of these in the dead center are weak letters that might run away. Now notice down there with the surround, which is saviv in Hebrew. To surround, or we have the kolal, the second down toward the bottom, or we have tamam at the bottom as well. These are what we call germinate. Germinate means that there's 2 letters, they germinated and reproduced, just as we learn in science or biology or earth science, whatever. These letters have reproduced, they're doubled. So notice you have a double vav, a double bait, you have a double lamed, you have a double mem. And so one of the 2 might disappear. And that's why we say, okay, germinate is also something that could happen. Maybe the word had a double, and then whenever you stuck something on the front side, the double switched down to being a single of that type. These aren't always going to be letters that are part of Jonah's name, such as in the case of the bait or the mem there. Jonah does not have bait or mem in his name. Nevertheless, these can run away because they are a germinate word type, a germinate letter type. Type number 3 of weak words would be fitting into the lamed case. So if we're looking at the 3-letter root, it's the far left of it, okay? The far left, the lamed position from the pa'al. And we see here that in that position, you might have a hey, an ayin, a hey, or a het, an aleph, a hey, or an ayin. I started kind of going backwards, up to down to up. I apologize. Shalach, we have mazah, we have bana, and we have zara. Send, find, build, and sow. These are all words that have weak letters that help build Jonah's name on the far left-hand side, and they can run away. But you're saying, Mario, chet as well as ayin are not a part of Jonah's name. Nevertheless, the hey on Jonah's name is for the guttural letters, of which the het as well as the ayin are part of. Double weak verbs. You will run into some words in the instance of these right here where there are multiple, 1, 2, or in the instance of was, 3 letters that are a part of Jonah's name, and they can disappear at whim or way. Okay, and so I was reading today from a Bible in Leviticus, and I ran into haya missing one of its hays. And so it just said hi. It just said hi right there. The other hey ran away. That is always possible. And so you have to pay attention. Sometimes there's multiple positions where something can run away. And so you could say it's a lamed. So for instance, if let's go with the haya, the was, okay? It could be considered a pay, hey. It could be a ayin, yod, or it could be a hey, lamed, hey, weak verb. So it can fit into all 3 of the prior discussed classes of weak verbs. So if you run into a verb and you're doing the parsing, you circle the root and you say, oh my goodness, I only find 2 letters. Well, then we have to figure out which letter went missing. So a lot of the times, again, your ears will hear when your eyes lie. Read it out loud. A lot of the times you will hear and know immediately, I bet you it is this word. And most of the time my students get it right on the money whenever they hear it out loud. And they say, oh, that has to be halak to walk, or something of that sort. Another thing that we pay attention to, here's some others that are double weak ones, is taught, lead, saw, pastured, right? We have others that we have, which is went forth, lifted up, praise, breath, breathed, knew, departed, right? Yazah, nasa, yada, nafah. We have yada again, and then nasa. And so we have these words that are doubly weak, and so honestly, we're not quite certain which of the letters is going to disappear. We're not quite certain which of the letters might disappear, but you have to be aware that it can be multiple letters that disappear. But these double weak verbs are really not that common in my estimation of reading the Bible for a few years, right? Here's some more that might show up. We have borrow, drank, become, and so we have lava, we have rava, and we have shava, okay? These are all words that can lose multiple different letters, and in this instance, it could be either the ayin or the lamed case letter. The second or the third position might disappear. Don't kill yourself striving to memorize all of these things. Rather, I want you to memorize or really drill down and have set in your mind, these are the letters before you on this chart that I need to consider whenever I'm parsing a verb and only find 2 of the letters before me. I don't know that there are instances where there's only 1 letter left. I'm fairly certain in my reading of the Hebrew Bible for years that it's always going to leave you with 2 letters. 1 will run away, not 2 of the case. There might be a case out there, but again, humbly speaking, I'm not certain. I could be wrong of that, okay? So this is what we call the Jonah principle. Just as Jonah ran away and was scared, don't be scared at parsing verbs, either strong or now what you call weak verbs, because Jonah's name can help you remember which letters are always flighty and might run away just like a dove, because his name is Dove. Thanks for coming. Please read God's word in Hebrew to nourish your soul every day. I'll see you in the next lesson.